Hello everybody, this is Paolo from Technology Optimized. As promised in the last weeks, I finally received my LG OLED G3 and I immediately started to testing it in a very in-depth way, both for movies and moreover on the gaming side, in order to tweak and basically redo all my optimized settings compared to previous year's model. Almost everything was redone and retested, and a lot of things has changed. Because mainly LG G3 and the 2023 series as well, so this also includes C3 as well, is the biggest jump, the biggest upgrade LG has done in the past years, both from the panel side and the processing side, especially for G3 with the MLA introduction, which basically upgraded their RGB OLEDs to the QD OLEDs luminance space and the color reproduction, which is really great. I'm really happy so far with the TV. So today I'll show you a really comprehensive guide on how to properly set up and have the really best settings both for SDR, HDR, Dolby Vision, movies, and also games, also on the game part. So without further ado, I think that we can start this walkthrough and video settings guide by set up the general settings first. Okay, as a first thing to do, as soon as you will unbox your TV, is go to the gear button. Then in the upper left corner, again, gear button, go to the support category, software update, and be sure to update to the latest firmware. I currently tested the TV with the current firmware 03.10.55 of the TV, which also which already fixed a lot of the bugs and issues, and especially fixed the TPC and GSR auto dimming issue, which plugged and still plugs previous LG OLED. This is finally fixed starting from 2023 series onward. So basically you will not encounter the auto dimming anymore, both for movies and games, and without entering the service menu and risking to avoid your warranty. So this is one of the many fixes that LG has done this year, and usually LG demonstrated to be very reliable with the firmware updates. So as the very first things, be sure to check for updates and update your TV. So let's switch to the most sneaky settings also for this year. Go to the General tab, scroll down to the energy saving step, and be sure that this is set to off to avoid luminance reduction for your TV. And then you can leave auto power off to 4 hours, it's okay. You can go back, go to OLED care, and also here make sure that the care picture settings are also off. And on the OLED panel care section, you can disable care recommendation, adjust logo brightness, considering that now GSR is functioning properly. This is not needed anymore, so you can turn it off. Screen move also is no more necessary because TPC and GSR are working as intended, and we are only using mostly calibrated settings, so this is not really useful to avoid burn-in. And in order to obtain some sharpness back and also to avoid seeing the whole picture moving around, you can safely turn screen move off. On general system, you can go to the additional settings here and keep Quick Start Plus, but then go to the home settings and start disabling some LG overly aggressive advertising with the content recommendation turned off and home promotion turned off. You can go back, you can keep the standby light on, and then go to the advertisement section and also enable limit AD tracking for further diminishing LG advertising. But if you want a complete guide on how to further reduce LG advertisement on the TV, please check the link in the description, where you can find my full guide on how to further block some specific EP for providing you a lot of advertisement during your TV usage. Another thing that you can turn off is the always ready function. I usually turn this off in order for the TV to properly go to the sleep mode, consuming less power and prolonging also the life of the device. On external devices section, make sure if you are using an external soundbar, go to the HDMI settings and enable the Simply Link HDMI CEC in order to control the soundbar directly from the TV. Then go to the sound section. I'm currently using a soundbar, as you can see, in the sound out section. So here you can go to the use the wired speaker and be sure that HDMI ARC device is selected. Along with the advanced settings, if you scroll down all to the bottom, that eARC support is also enabled, and digital sound output for the soundbar or the speaker system is set to pass through. If audio is working correctly and is being output correctly with this setting on, leave it on, because this will provide the highest quality of audio and the lowest input delay. Regarding the input delay, you can keep all these settings, which will be grayed out for external speakers as is, and also the DTV audio settings to auto. Then go to the match screen and sound and be sure that the bypass this year is unselected and that HDMI ARC device delay is set to 0. You need to repeat this for each input, but I found that these settings are the best in providing the lowest audio delay possible. If you decided to use the internal speakers, you will see these settings unlocked. You can select the sound mode for the internal speakers and set them to game optimizer sound, which also provides the lowest audio delay, but also preserve the game optimizer menu, which we will see later on when we will set up gaming. On general settings, if you use also the internal speakers, you can enable AI Sound Pro and then perform an AI acoustic tuning and set it to boost. Right now I have those locked because I'm using an external speaker. For the AI settings, also make sure in all inputs and all presets that those are all unselected, as I found that they do more harm than good. And also under the AI recommendation, you can uncheck next picks and smart tips also to avoid additional annoying messages from LG. Before moving to the picture settings, you can also perform a little trick. Press 3 times the mute button for accessing a hidden menu, which lets you disable the show logo, LG logo, when turning off the TV. I found this very useful and very annoying when the logo will appear every time you turn off the TV. This will get rid of that. You can keep the no signal image for accompanying some error, let's say, message when no signal is detected. Okay, let's switch to the picture mode settings. I've just loaded up an SDR movie from the Netflix app on WebOS, which I will pause to avoid a copyright strike. But from here, once you loaded an SDR content on WebOS, click the gear button again, go again to the gear button in the upper left corner, and be sure to select filmmaker mode for SDR movies. Then go to the advanced settings, this on WebOS. go to the brightness section and be sure that all pixel brightness is set to 80 as a baseline. This will be very bright for SDR, but still accurate, because as you can see, the peak brightness option is turned off, so color accuracy and everything will be very accurate, just also very bright for the panel, especially for G3. If this is too bright for you in a dark room, you can decrease it to around, I don't know, 50 or 60 to your liking. If it's too dim for you in a bright room, you can max it out safely to 100, because like I said, peak brightness is off, so you wouldn't risk burn-in or something like that. So as a baseline, you can keep it at 80, which looks great to me. Adjust contrast, 85 is correct. Black level 50 is also accurate. Auto dynamic contrast, leave it off to avoid the image going rampant in an erratic way during the viewing. Peak brightness, keep it off for SDR. Gamma BT 1886 is correct for SDR, and it's also very accurate out of the box. Video range, here on WebOS you'll see it locked out to auto, but in this case this will correspond to limited, and for others HDMI sources it's also best to set it to limited, and I will set it to limited later when on the gaming configuration. Motion eye care, leave it off. Color, I changed this from the default of 50 to 55, as this is even more accurate for the filmmaker preset, so you can keep it at 55. Tint, leave it at 0. Color gamut, auto detect is correct. Fine tune, you'll find color adjustment, leave it off. White balance, I think that this year LG did a really great job out of the box with warm 50, which is less warm and yellowish or reddish compared to previous years, but really good out of the box. And personally I will stick with warm 50, but if you find it too warm, I don't know, compared to other devices you use in the home and you are seeing too much of a difference, you can lower it down to warm 40, or but not lower. To me personally, I will stick with warm 50, like I said. Now I also suggest to use the method 22-point signal level percentage and go to the signal level percentage 2.5, which is the lowest gamma, and once here you can increase the luminance of this area by a +5 to slightly improve the darkest detail of SDR. So I suggest it to set it to +5. You can go back safely and go to the clarity section. Here also LG really improved their processing starting from the 2023 series, and we are now in Sony territory, so it's really good how the TV is now improving the image with these options, with this clarity option, without introducing noticeable artifacts. So for sharpness, I found that 0 is still the neutral value, and I recommend 0 especially if you use 4K HDR Blu-rays most of the time. So maybe you watch almost all the time uncompressed contents, but as soon as you use YouTube app, Netflix app, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus and so on, streaming services, but also regular TV, sharpness 20 is really good at both an anti-aliasing for lower res sources, but also improving clarity for higher resolution contents without introducing haloing or sharpness artifacts at all. They are not noticeable at all, at least to me, but all texts and fine detail will improve when using sharpness 20. So it's a really no-brainer decision to me, and I left it to 20. If you go higher than this, you can start noticing some artifacts around edges, so I wouldn't go higher, at least not for higher resolution contents. If you play all the consoles and so on, you can use it 25, but that's the maximum I will set it. For most contents, set it to 20. Super resolution is tied to the sharpness setting, and I found also here, talking about better processing, that super resolution low further improves textures and make textures more clear, more crisp, without introducing any artifact at all. And the more you increase the sharpness values, the more the super resolution effect will be noticeable. I found that the sharpness 20 and low provides a very good processing without any downside for most contents. Like I said earlier, if you having a Nintendo Switch or watching, I don't know, 480p or 720p or very crappy content, you can go sharpness 25 maybe as super resolution medium or high, in order to visibly improve the clarity of that bad image, let's say, but you will also start seeing some small artifacts in the screen. So keep it in 20 and low for most contents, especially higher res contents, as the best settings. Noise reduction and MPEG noise reduction, same thing. Leaving it to low will remove some macro blocking artifacts and some low compression pixels artifacts, especially from streaming services. You can turn both these to off, like I said, if you mostly play 4K HDR Blu-rays, but for the most people and for most streaming services, these two at low do a really good job in cleaning some mess from the compression artifacts from the image. Smooth gradation, instead, I always recommend this to low, as this is very effective in removing color banding, especially in HDR, even in 4K HDR Blu-rays. So this can always be kept to low for the less color banding possible without ruining fine details. Here, Real Cinema, I set it to on before, because this will remove judder from the image, but starting from 2023 series, especially on G3 with its MLA panel, which basically doubled its luminance compared to previous models. Judders and stutters will be much more visible this time around, but this is an inherent limitation and defect, let's say, for OLED motion with almost near instant response time of the pixel. So I found that Real Cinema On, coupled with True Motion, which initially I set to cinematic movement, removed also the stutters along with the judders, but I found that cinematic movement also introduced some noticeable soap opera effect, especially on fast moving scenes like action sequences in movies. And I found that customizing True Motion with user selection and the judder slider and the blur slider to 2 is a middle ground between True Motion off and True Motion cinematic movement. Those will fix stutters as well, but soap opera effect will be basically unnoticeable most of the time, if not always noticeable. And I found that the motion with this set to 2 is really good, and basically fixes the stutter issue especially on the MLA panel on G3. So you can leave it to 2 and 2. OLED motion, this is black frame insertion. I recommend it to be left to off, because this will noticeably dim the overall luminance and also introduce input lag for gaming, and I don't know, I think that the downsides are too many compared to the advantages, so keep it off. Okay, we can go back. Now that we have set up the filmmaker mode SDR preset, you can click on the apply to all inputs, and by clicking yes, you basically applied all settings, not only on the first page like previous OLEDs, but all settings of the preset to all other inputs, with some exception I will show you in a couple of seconds. The only places where the apply to all inputs will not work are the web browser app on WebOS, where it will be considered as a separate input. So you have to make sure to go here again and manually set up filmmaker mode like we did before manually, because the settings will not apply with the apply all button. We can now move to the good stuff for the HDR for movies calibration. So you can launch any HDR video on YouTube like this one, then click the gear button again and the other gear button again. Also here for HDR, select the filmmaker mode, which is the most accurate out of the box. Go to the advanced settings, brightness. And here you can leave OLED pixel brightness to 100, adjust contrast to 100, and then don't panic because I've set black level to 48, because I found that dynamic tone mapping is really good this year, and really improved compared to previous years as well, from 5,000 analysis zone to 20,000 analysis zone. And finally, it's not ruining night scenes or black scenes like it did in the past. And also is not over brightening too much the picture, so the differences with on and off are really minimal, but they are still there. The only downside I found is that enable dynamic tone mapping will slightly increase black level, so this is a way to compensate the slight increase, and decreasing this to 48 instead of 50 will basically completely fix this small raise, with the benefit of having slightly brighter and more luminance highlights, especially with those contents which are graded with lower nits mastering peak brightness. So I found this really good this year, and it's even more a must to be enabled this time, with only this offset change of black level from 50 to 48. Auto dynamic contrast, leave it to off because this is not necessary with dynamic tone mapping. Expression enhancer is a new setting that will mess with the medium range and gamma to make objects appear more pronounced, but lowering the brightness of the background. I don't like it, and I suggest to leave it off. Peak brightness high is correct for HDR, gamma 2.2 is locked but good. Video range, same thing, this should be set to limited, but on WebOS it's okay to auto because it will mean limited as well. Motion eye care, leave it to off. Color, here you can leave color depth to 50, which is correct for HDR, not 55 this year. Tint, leave it at 0. Color gamut auto detect is correct also for HDR. Color adjustment, leave it off. White balance also here, great, warm 50 this year for HDR, and no more adjustment are needed in HDR. So you can just leave it to warm 50 or lower it for preference down at max to warm 40, but personally I will stick with warm 50 this year. To the clarity section, same thing, sharpness 20 and super resolution, noise reduction, MPEG noise reduction and smooth gradation all too low are good as a universal suggestion. Real cinema on, like for SDR, and True Motion also here set to de-judder 2 and de-blur 2, OLED motion disabled. You can go back and also in this case you can apply to all inputs, also the HDR filmmaker mode presets, and this will be actually copied to all inputs. Leave also for SDR, leave filmmaker mode auto start and reduce blue light disabled. For Dolby Vision, just launch any Dolby Vision title from the Netflix app on WebOS. Also here I will just pause the reproduction to avoid copyright claim. But from here, click the gear button, go also again the gear button, and I know that purists will gonna hate me, but I found that the Cinema Home mode is still better than Dolby Vision Cinema preset, which contrary to HDR with DTM off, it's much more dim and much more muted compared to HDR filmmaker mode with dynamic tone mapping off, but things will get similar to HDR only when switching to Dolby Vision Cinema Home instead of Cinema, which is basically a Dolby Vision variant of dynamic tone mapping embedded in the preset. So this is basically very similar to HDR with dynamic tone mapping on. I know it will not be that accurate on paper, on scientific benchmark and so on, but in real world, when watching real movies and real contents in Dolby Vision, I just found that Dolby Vision Cinema is just too dark, with also some crushed black in the very low end, and I don't recommend it at all, because this TV can do much better than this with the especially G3 with double the brightness of previous years. So using Cinema is just not full leveraging the TV in my opinion. So select Cinema Home for the best overall experience for most users and the most room condition. Then go to the advanced settings, go to the brightness section. Only pixel brightness 100 is correct for Dolby Vision. Adjust contrast 100 is also correct. Same thing, black level, set it to 48 like HDR with dynamic tone mapping on, because this will also compensate, if not fix completely, the black level raise which is due to Dolby Vision Cinema Home preset using something very similar to dynamic tone mapping. So also here black level 48 is okay. Auto dynamic contrast, leave it to off. Here you can see the selection of dynamic tone mapping because it's embedded in Dolby Vision format when using Cinema Home. Expression enhancer, leave it off. Peak brightness high is correct. Also here gamma 2.2 is correct. Here you can see even on WebOS the video range is set to limited, which is correct. Motion eye care, leave it to off. Color depth 50 is also correct in Dolby Vision. Tint, leave it at 0. Color gamut, you can change it, but it's automatically set to native, which is correct for Dolby Vision, opposed to the auto gamut. Fine tune, color adjustment, leave it to off. White balance, also here amazing job by LG this year. Leave it to warm 50 is absolutely the best, or you can decrease it if you want, but for me stick to warm 50. Clarity, same thing, sharpness 20, super resolution low, noise reduction low, MPEG noise reduction low, smooth relation low, real cinema on, and then you can after you can enable true motion with the user selection, de-judder set to 2 and de-blur set to 2, and disable OLED motion. You can go back also here for Dolby Vision. You can click apply to all inputs, and this will be copied accordingly to all presets. For both SDR, HDR and Dolby Vision presets, once set up correctly for each input, so in this case for WebOS, after doing this, go to the general settings and double check that AI service, AI Picture Pro, AI brightness and so on are all disabled, except if you want to use AI Sound Pro for internal speaker with the AI acoustic tuning set to bass boost. Okay, time to move on the gaming side, and I'm currently using an Xbox Series X as an example, but most of these settings will also, if not all, will also apply to PlayStation 5 as well. Once you have switched to the HDMI port of the gaming console, click on the input button on the remote, and as you can see, the TV on the first configuration will automatically assign the game console icon to the console, which then I renamed Xbox, but the icon will be automatically assigned by LG, which is also good. I would avoid PC mode this year and 444 for a series of reasons. You can click the gear button again and double check also on general, external devices, HDMI settings, and double check if 444 pass-through setting is disabled. This is very important as the first thing to double check before proceeding in doing anything else. Quick media switching, you can leave it on. This will reduce the amount of time the TV will show a black screen when handshaking between SDR, HDR, or switching signal hertz. And then HDMI deep color, double check that 4K is selected in order to leverage the full HDMI 2.1 bandwidth. Also simply link HDMI CEC, leave it enabled. Okay, once here we can start calibrating SDR, but just consider that there are a couple of console settings that you want to check first. So in case of Xbox, go to settings, go to general and TV and display option, and be sure that the console is set to 4K UHD at 120 Hz. On Xbox, the console will always stick to 4K 120 Hz, while on PlayStation this 120 Hz will switch only in specific games, while the dashboard will stay at 4K 60. On PlayStation you can leave all these settings to automatics, except for one settings which I will show you now on Xbox as well. If you go to the video modes, I currently have selected all except VRR, allow YCC 422 and Dolby Vision for gaming. I have not checked the VRR for now deliberately, because these settings will be universal and will be always enable VRR also when watching movies from the console, but this will change soon with a setting which will be updated with a firmware upgrade that right now is on insider builds, and which allow you to select VRR only for gaming, which is what you really want. But for now I just unchecked it for you to show you how automatic low latency mode works on Xbox, and will work also in the future when you will be able to select the VRR for gaming only. So this is not meaning that you need to disable VRR, but basically that it's better to disable it for everything except games. So when you use Xbox for watching movies on streaming application or watching Blu-rays, you should disable this manually right now, like I've just did now, and re-enable it manually for when gaming. So just keep in mind that in the future this will not be manual but will be automatic. So for now I just keep it off. YCC 422 is always better to be left alone and disabled, because this is just a compatibility option for older TVs that did not handle well the handshaking between let's say raw HDR signal and so on from SDR, and caused maybe black screen or disconnection. So I will keep it off, because enabling this will also ruin colors in HDR and Dolby Vision, so just leave it off. Dolby Vision for gaming is not worth at all for me, for a lot of reasons. You can find in one of my articles linked in the description. HDR, properly set up HDR is just better for gaming, so keep Dolby Vision for gaming off for many reasons you can read by yourself in my Patreon page. Go to the video fidelity overscan, make sure that display is set to auto detect, and the color depth is set to 8-bit, which is correct. This is also regards SDR color depth, which means that will be preserved as the original 8-bit SDR signal and not up converted to 10-bit before providing it to the TV. But don't worry, because this is only SDR. When you launch HDR, you see this switch to 10-bit, native 10-bit, and 12-bit in Dolby Vision as well. So this is basically equal to auto. I don't know why Microsoft will persevere in calling this 8-bit and so on. Just call it to auto, will be much better and much more understandable. Color space is very important. Here it's the only settings that you only need to change also on PS5. On PS5 it's called RGB limited. Set it to RGB limited, and here on Xbox standard, because these TV are internally calibrated with RGB limited in mind. All the presets I've shown you before are pre-calibrated with RGB limited in mind. If you set it to full, it will just look wrong compared to RGB limited, and you may have also experienced some handshaking issue with the HDR, with the auto option on the TV, which most of the time is not working as intended. So just always force everything to limited and standard in this case. Apps can add a border, leave it disabled, as I found that also this can create issues. And then we can start calibrating SDR and HDR for games, but just want you to show how ALLM is the first thing that you must be sure to enable before proceeding. So just to demonstrate how ALLM work on Xbox, right now I'm in the dashboard with VRR disabled, or in the future if you have that option to gaming only will be the same. If I go to the gear button here, you can see I'm currently using the filmmaker mode with the same user settings I set up earlier for movies. Then if I go to the advanced setting clarity, for example, you can see that I'm still able to use noise reduction and peg noise reduction and so on. So this means that I can use this preset for watching movies, SDR movies, but will be the same thing also for HDR and Dolby Vision. But as soon as I will launch an SDR game, in this case, I will try, I don't know, Hi-Fi Rush. Yes, this is SDR. As soon as I launch the game, which is fantastic, by the way, I highly recommend you to play this. You'll see that if I go now to the all settings, the game optimizer menu was activated, and the trick is don't use game mode, but use filmmaker mode with the same settings I have shown you before, which I have copied also for all other inputs. Just double check here after you select filmmaker mode that you have on the brightness section, you have the video range set to limited, like I'll show you now, and then go to clarity and make sure that super resolution, which I have enabled for movies, is disabled this time, because even too low it will introduce a very small amount of input lag, extra input lag, which you don't want, so keep it off. All other settings, as you can see, were already grayed out and turned off by ALLM. So this means that we are now having the same low input lag of game mode, and you can also double check it by clicking the gear button here, going to the game optimizer menu. And here you can find that low latency is set to on. When enabling VRR, it will always be low latency on with low input lag, but even with VRR off, in this case, we have low input lag thanks to working ALLM, which you can double check also here. And VRR side, I recommend you to only use one of those two. So in my case on Xbox, I recommend using just AMD FreeSync Premium but not VRR and G-Sync. Vice versa, on PS5 you can use VRR and G-Sync and not AMD FreeSync Premium, which is not supported natively. And on PC it will depend if you have AMD video card, so use this, or an NVIDIA video card and use that. ALLM, this is very important, must be enabled. Fine-tune dark areas, set it to -4, because this will only work when VRR is enabled, and will fix the raised gamma of VRR when enabled, so it will put back the black levels to the corresponding values of VRR off when set to -4. So once you verified to be in the low latency mode, you are basically done for SDR, and I will show you also how it will look, because the big advantage here is that we are now preserving the dynamic color boosting, which like I said will keep the high luminance color of both SDR and HDR games and movies in a very comparable way to the QD OLED space. So while preserving that, as you can see, as I'm playing right now, you will you can trust me on that, you will really preserve the lowest input lag possible, the same identical low input lag of the game mode, the game optimizer preset. For HDR gaming configuration, the first thing to do is going to the system level HDR calibration app, which is located here on Xbox, but you'll find it the relative app for PlayStation 5 with its settings as well, which you can find in the description below. On Xbox, if you will open Calibrated HDR for games, the system level HDR calibration app will appear and the HDR will be triggered. To just double check you're using the best settings to me for gaming in HDR, go to the gear button here. Again, just use HDR filmmaker mode instead of HDR game optimizer preset with hgig, and don't worry, because you will not lose anything or anything important with hgig, but you will instead just add some features on top of it while preserving a low input lag, and I will explain it to you right now. So first of all, select the filmmaker mode also here, which you can see these already applied all the settings we have copied from WebOS. Just make sure this is also for SDR to have the aspect ratio to just scan set to on, and on the gaming side use user selection set to 16:9, while for movies on WebOS it was forced to original, which is correct for movies. Once you check that, also double check in the advanced settings, go to brightness, and also here double check that the video range is set to limited, and as you can see, dynamic tone mapping is also enabled for the also for gaming, with the same identical settings for movies, with black level also set to 48. Once you have set up that, you can go back, and also on clarity double check that super resolution is also set to off. Manually set this to off as well for HDR gaming. All the rest, as you can see, is already automatically disabled for low latency for the Xbox. So right now, after you double check that, you can close this, click the gear button again, and go to the game optimizer menu, and also here same as SDR, scroll down, double check that everything is the same, and the fine-tuned dark areas is independent from SDR and HDR, so also for HDR set it to -4, which is the closest match to the VRR off black level. So once you have double checked this, you can also check for example the sound option. You have AI game sound enabled, so you can leave it as is. Currently, you can see we are with VRR off, but the low latency is triggered on. This will work also for games. When everything is set up like this, you can go back to the HDR calibration app, and in the first screen you can just press at the same time the left bumper, left trigger, right bumper and right trigger at the same time, and on the upper right corner you'll see appearing the min TML, max TML and max FFTML values for the application, which each line will correspond to each of these of the steps of the app. In the first step, make sure you go all the way to the left to 0.000 for the pure black. Then click next for the second screen and the last screen. Make sure you set those to 4000 nits when using filmmaker mode. While with the hgig, and this also is the same for games, for manual in-game settings, for hgig on G3, hgig is correspond to 1500 nits for the clipping point, while for C3, and that's with the main difference between the two, the clipping point is still at 800 nits. When using filmmaker mode with the settings I've shown to you, even when using dynamic tone mapping on, like I'm doing right now, the correct clipping point is still 4000 nits. This is very, very important. Don't use any other peak HDR luminance point. Even if dynamic tone mapping will work and try to adjust anything you throw at him, but the best and correct setting is 4000 nits for the filmmaker HDR filmmaker preset when used with games. So once you have properly set up the HDR system calibration, you can launch any HDR game and test the final results. So I just launched Forza Horizon 5 on Xbox Series X, which is one example of game which will actually leverage the system HDR calibration. And as you can see, with the 4000 nits settings and all the settings you have seen for the HDR filmmaker preset, you can see the results are really, really mind-blowing. Dynamic tone mapping is not blowing out the highlights of that clouds, but will contribute to give highlights that punch, very similar to what a hgig is doing when properly set up, in this case on G3 at 1050 nits. So the punch, let's say the vibrancy of the highlights will be very, very similar, if not identical to hgig, but as you can see here with this lamp, without blowing it out, but at the same time you will preserve the dynamic color boosting technology, so the luminance of the colors will be preserved at the very, very high spectrum of the colors. And all of this, just to give you a confirmation, if you push the gear button, you'll see that the latency is low, even with VRR off in this case, but with VRR on it will be even more so. But even with VRR off, we have the low latency and the same low input lag of the game optimizer preset. I just will do a quick run here just to show you the contrast, the amazing contrast. And now we are in a fairly, let's say, dim, the dusk environment, and as you can see, dynamic tone mapping is not blowing out night scenes or dusk scenes at all. This was completely fixed finally from 2023 model, just with the black level setting of HDR set from 50 to 48. We basically have the best of both worlds. We have the best colors, the best brightness and black levels, but also the best highlights and precision and accuracy. All of this, quindi all of these things, while preserving the lowest input lag possible. For games which are not leveraging and using the system level HDR calibration like Halo Infinite, you must set in-game what the peak HDR luminance is for the game specifically. Right now I'm playing Halo Infinite with HDR filmmaker mode and ALLM enabled with low input lag with the settings I've shown you earlier. All is exactly the same. With the only difference that in game I have set the HDR luminance to 67 in case of Halo Infinite, that this was measured, and it's exactly equal to 4000 nits, but manually set for Halo Infinite in game. As you can see, specular highlights are incredible, really pushing like hgig do with the single specific highlights, while preserving the accuracy, even if now I'm using dynamic tone mapping. Things are not overblown or messed up. Black level also here, so even without supporting the system level calibration, black level is correct. Nothing is over bright. Input lag is low, and I really think that for G3 and also C3 and 2023 series, this is the best that you can get. Even if LG will manage to somehow introduce the dynamic color boosting also to HDR game optimizer, I still think that the 100 nits brighter image coupled with dynamic tone mapping, the new dynamic tone mapping Pro, which is called like that, working in filmmaker mode presets, is still worth using filmmaker mode also in the future, even if LG will fix the game optimizer mode, especially because the input lag, guys, is really low, exactly the same as the game optimizer preset. So there are no more reason to use the game optimizer, but filmmaker mode with ALLM is the way to go, with also dynamic tone mapping on. Having dynamic tone mapping on is also useful for all those games, and there are a lot of them that does not support the system level calibration and does not provide in-game peak HDR luminance sliders at all. So they are basically they have basically a fixed curve, a fixed tone mapping curve which you cannot change, which more often than not is at 10,000 nits or 2,000 nits. So dynamic tone mapping will still better adjust those fixed curve for the real capability of the TV. In this case, this TV can go G3 can go as high as 500 nits, sorry. So dynamic tone mapping will always help in keep the maximum brightness while still tone mapping correctly the image of what it reads, especially compared to previous year OLEDs. Right now is much more accurate than before. Okay, I think that that's all for now and for this TV, but contrary to my previous post, I really think that there's not much else to do to further improve this you can see right now. And this, like I said, will apply both to G3 and C3 and all 2023 series, and probably also future series as well, considering that probably next year we'll only see a minor refresh with the introduction of MLA also to C4 probably, and a refreshed G3 with the G4, but I'm not expecting some generational generational jump like the one we had this year from the regular OLED panel to MLA panel. So guys, thank you so much for staying with me. I hope that this guide actually did help you in set up the best experience for you in SDR, HDR and Dolby Vision, both for movies but also and especially for gaming with these tricks I found, and I'm really happy with my final results with them. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, but also in the usual forums where you can find me. And most important of all, please, if you found all of these useful, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, but moreover support my work on patreon.com, where you can find over 200, I guess we are now surpassed the 200 in-game HDR settings recommendation for single HDR games both on PlayStation 5, Xbox and PC. So thank you again, and see you on the next time. Enjoy your 2023 LG OLEDs.